Welcome back. Still watching The Breakfast on Plus TV Africa. And now to our first major conversation. Senate President Ahmed Lawan says the National Assembly will further amend the Electoral Act 2022 to serve as a safeguard against weaknesses identified in the law. Mr. Lawan stated this following a matter of urgent national importance brought before the House by former Senate leader Abdullahi during plenary on Tuesday. Mr. Abdullahi, who is of the PDP Kebbi state, had urged or suggested that the Senate, quote, reverts to its earlier stance on direct primaries, end of quote. And the lawmaker had also asked fellow lawmakers of both the Senate and the House of Representatives to look out for the loopholes and the weaknesses in the 2022 Electoral Act and suspend subsequent legislation. Now, Mr. Abdullahi was reacting to the Supreme Court's decision to strike out a suit filed by President Muhammad Buhari and the Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami. The duo had challenged the controversial Section 84 of the Electoral Act, which provides that no political appointee at any level shall be a voting delegate or be voted for at the convention or congress of any political party for the purpose of nomination of the candidates for any election. But the seven-justice bench of the Supreme Court, led by Justice Musa Datijo Mohammed, unanimously struck out the suit last week. The justices described it as an abuse of court processes. Now we have this morning joining us to help analyze the implications of this, Mohammed Abdullahi, who is a public affairs analyst. Mr. Abdullahi, thank you very much for joining us this morning. I mean, it's something Nigerians may have thought that they were overdone and dusted with, because, of course, the 2023 election is around the corner. What are your thoughts on this new statement coming from the National Assembly, particularly the Senate, on direct primaries and the entire 2022 Electoral Act?
Thank you. Good morning for having me. From the just concluded primaries, we see that there is a whole lot of defect in the newly passed electoral bill, because the majority of the parties, in fact, all of the parties used the indirect primaries and in some instances consensus to elect their flag bearers at the various levels. But what we see played out is the fact that these indirect primaries gave more opportunities to money bags in the parties, while sidelining some of the candidates who even the masses might do. For instance, a good example is in the PDP, allegedly, while Peter Obi was there for a very long time, he had to leave because they tag him as a stingy one, someone who is not ready to dole out any cash in order to get the party's nod. So in this instance, there is a whole lot of rancor even within the political parties themselves, because if all of your activities is dependent on who is best to put down the highest pay, then most at times you might not get your best candidate forward. So I think it's a good development, but I think for me it's coming a little bit late, because this law that we're talking about has been passed into law. I mean, the bill has been passed into law, and it will require another process, another fresh process of amendment, which I don't see the current Senate, the current 9th Assembly being able to fundamentally amend the bill. Probably 10th Assembly after 2023 might then look into that. But I think it's a welcome development. But I think, again, in my opinion, I feel it should be open. I don't think it is right for the bill to state categorically that political parties must conduct their primaries via direct or indirect, that it should be open. Parties that are willing to adopt the direct primaries will be allowed, as well as parties that are willing to go the indirect primaries route should also be accommodated. So I think it should be, parties should be given choice to choose whichever route they feel is best for them.
Mohammed Abdullahi, apart from that, also that section of the Constitution, I beg your pardon, the Electoral Act has been described as evil. I mean, some people say it as evil because it castrates the executive arm of government. The executive arm, especially those political appointees, from being part, of the electoral process. And in the long run, the consequences are also there if you have political parties not adhering to, that part of the Electoral Act. So it's been described as an evil that needs to be eradicated. So I'd like to share your thoughts on that. Do you really think that this is an evil that needs to be eradicated?
Yes, definitely. We always hide under the guise that when you give people their full rights, it tends to favor one party or the other. But irrespective of that, I think it doesn't matter. The proponent of that section are clamoring for the fact that if you allow the political appointees, for instance, the ministers, the special advisors, then the president and the governors, for instance, will have a larger say in who wins or who will not win the primaries. But again, that is also taking away their fundamental human rights as enshrined in the Constitution, that they have right to vote and right to be voted for. So, like you rightly mentioned, I will agree to your description that that section is evil and is particularly taking away people's right to vote and be voted for. So it doesn't matter whether they are political appointees or not. That particular section is actually against the people's fundamental right as enshrined in the Constitution to vote and be voted for. Yeah.
Back to the issue of direct primaries. Of course, the senator representing KB State was a member of the PDP. Did say generally the Senate should consider amending the Electoral Act and to close the gaps, the loopholes seen or over the process of the party primaries so far and the electoral processes so far. You've said, well, Nigerians should not be forced to take one method of nominating or electing their candidates. But I mean, if we go back in history, we look at what happened, and I'm sorry, we've talked about this several times before, before January, when the Senate made a U-turn. But some have argued that, the best election in Nigeria's history was in 1992, when the option A4 was used, right? The process that led to the 1993 elections, let me call it that. And option A4, some people make a mistake to say it was an open ballot. It wasn't open balloting per se. It was about the method of nominating the candidates right from the local government level to the state level to the national level. And all those that participated in that election were candidates. Even the gentleman who was running mate to Abdullahi was a candidate. He came second in the national primary. And every single member of the party, from what we're told, participated in this process from the grassroots up until. So every state, you had to go to your state to win an election to come to. Should we consider, I mean, if it was such a successful election where the government said, this is the way we are going to allow Nigerians vote, and it came out successfully. I mean, government is there to think for the people, to say, okay, this is what we think should be done. If we have seen their mistakes, we've seen that there are some things that have gone wrong. We're talking about cash and carry politics. Should we not make changes to prevent cash and carry politics? Should we say, oh, no, we want people to be free to choose what they want to do? And then we see a continuation of cash and carry politics in the parties and at their primaries.
Yes, you're absolutely right. But we must get one thing, we must understand something, that the direct primaries, of nominating party candidates is actually very expensive. Because remember, it's almost like saying you are having a mini general election. Because that's what it means. For instance, take a state like Kano, where you have more than almost 7 to 8 million registered voters, for instance. You have maybe for I'm just guessing now, for the APC, the ruling party, you have about 3 million registered APC members. So what you are saying, if you go by the direct primary method, it means every candidate, whether you are a local, from the chairman, for instance, or to the House of Assembly, to the Senate contestants, and so on, and even the presidency, it means you have to line up somewhere, and you have about 3 million, then your what's it called? Maybe your poster is placed somewhere, and then the 3 million registered members of APC from each of the 44 or so local governments in Kano State will now have to compete or say this is who we are wanting and we are voting for. So it's like a mini general election. That is more expensive for even the political parties to run. You understand? So it is a bit challenging, even though it is more grassroots driven. Yeah, it means for you to win the election, your people must know you. You must have gone there to tell them this is what you want to do here, 1, 2, 3, 4, blah, blah, blah. But it is expensive, and it is very difficult at this time that we have our political parties, the way they are structured, to be able to conduct such primaries, particularly for the presidency. You know, maybe for state governorship and even the state House of Assemblies is possible, but it's very, very expensive and time consuming. If we employed a bit more of even electronic voting, innovations and technology, that might be a bit easier. But the way we run things manually, where people who have to line up supporting their particular candidate, that might be very, very expensive and challenging for political parties to run. That is one. But having said that, we should understand that it's actually the very best form, like I mentioned, because it means these candidates are grassroots driven, people know them, and they are aware of what they are capable of doing or not.
Well, so the next question for me would be, in whose interest is all of this, you know, back and forth? I mean, the fact that there's a tendency that, you know, the Senate might be considering the amendment of the Electoral Act and that part of the Electoral Act. In whose interest is all of this done? Is it for the interest of democracy, strengthening our electoral process, or?
It will be in Nigeria's interest.
Really? Again, is it really in Nigeria's interest, or it's in?
Now we have options. Yes, yes. I'm still. My line of thought is, if you have a process that encourages the participation of more Nigerians, definitely it's in the interest of Nigerians. For instance, so many people do not even know their candidates, and they just, appoint or select a particular delegate that have actually been paid to go to the to the National Convention to select delegates on their own behalf. So if you have direct primaries, for instance, it is in the interest of Nigeria, because I, as a person, will be participating fully in the selection process of the candidate that will represent me in the general election. But that is one. You understand? But again, like I mentioned earlier, it won't also be in Nigeria's interest that we have just the policy or the bill that will be amended, saying Nigerians must elect their candidates, via primaries, via the direct method. That's not democracy. Democracy gives you choices. You understand? That's why I said it will be in Nigeria's interest, one way or the other. But it is also best that in the interest of democracy and the people and the country at large, that we have at least options. Like there are smaller parties, for instance, regional parties that do not have the wherewithal of the big parties. How do you expect them to conduct a direct primary? You understand? So it is easier that we have options, and political parties are left with the option to choose which is best for them.
All right. So this is you coming up with a solution to. You've saying, of course, let the aspirants they be free. The parties are free to choose whichever method they'd like to adopt. But looking at the loopholes, we've seen loopholes in the 2022 Electoral Act. The methods being prescribed in that act. We're seeing some mistakes. Some things that have been observed in the party primaries. how exactly can this issue of cash and carry politics be done with in Nigerian politics? The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission has tried. You saw during some primaries they were there searching some Ghana must go bags or sack bags, as it were. Nothing came out of it. So what can we do? You know what's been happening with the senatorial, elections or primaries of the parties, and the use of placeholders. What happened with Lawan and Machina? What happened in Ebonyi State with Umahi? What happened in Akwa Ibom State with Godswill Akpabio, and of course Mikey Guinea, the rec there, putting his foot down. So these are some of the things we're seeing. People never stood for elections, were not there, and then the party substitutes the names and put some other person there, and then we have consensus and all that. How can we correct this if you're saying we should not give the parties one method to follow?
The thing is, the simple answer is we must demonetize our electionary process. The whole process of electioneering in Nigeria is very much monetized. From whatsoever level, from the minimum to the highest level, is so monetized. And the reason is that the system generally is not one system that is susceptible to accountability. Because, for instance, even let's look at the presidency, for instance. The entire salary, aside allowances for Nigerian president as enshrined in the Constitution, is about 60 million or less for 4 years. So, what is the parameters? If you are going to earn 60 million or so for 4 years of salary, and you have spent more than $1 billion campaigning and paying people to nominate you as a flag bearer of a political party. What does that mean? It tells you that when you get there, definitely this is a business. It's a cash and carry business. You first of all have to see how you recoup your investment. Now, that's why I mentioned that our system is not susceptible to accountability. You understand? So that is the thing. We must make sure there's accountability at all levels. That is very, very important. And people must do their job. You mentioned ICPC and EFCC, for instance. We had in this country just recently where we have allegedly some delegates paid about 14 million. They even went back to their constituencies to display this one received from being a delegate in one of the political parties' national convention. So what did the EFCC and the ICPC do? They were on ground at that event. What did they do? So it's important that we not just only have policies or laws. It is more important that it is implemented. People were so irrespective of their caliber, irrespective of their cadre in the society, are made to face the law, and justice is upheld. It's very, very important, and that's what we've been lacking. So for us to get out of this quagmire, I will always advise that we allow accountability in our system.
Mohammed Abdullahi, sorry to interrupt you. You're saying we should allow accountability. They won't allow accountability. That's not what they're there for. If they allow accountability, they're going to lose out. As long as the system allows them to do this, they will do it. You can't pin it on them. You won't catch them giving money to delegates. There's no way EFCC is going to trace them.
You should demand for accountability.
No, but we've been demanding for it, and they don't care. As long as they can get away with it, they'll do it.
You must continue demanding.
And that's why all of this conversation, you have also said that this is, for the interest of Nigerians. It doesn't look like it's the interest of Nigerians, because interest would always, be the issue. I mean, where we are today, it's been said that we're where we are today as a country because we've had personal interests dominating national interests. But let's still stay with it now. Talking about that very section, just like Kofi had mentioned, that maybe up until this time, one would think that we have gotten over all of this and we're thinking about the elections in 2023. But here we are, talking about that section of the Electoral Act 84 and 12. But the consequence consequences of infraction of that section is set out in the following subsection, and that's in section 84:13, which says that a political party fails to comply with the provision of this act in the conduct of its primaries, its candidate for the election shall not be included in the election for the particular position in the issue. I mean, some persons are saying that this might just be the reason why this part of that constitution. I mean, you're looking at A, but you forget that there's a B there that could truncate the A. So what do you make of this now?
Yes, if I may ask you, what did the electoral bill say? Is it compelling that the political
So we're looking at 84.
That's what you say.
We're looking at 84:12. There's no political appointee at any level. I mean, that's it basically, and all of the lacunas that the lawmakers are talking about. So we're saying that with all of this, direct primaries, not allowing political appointees to be part of it, and what have you, there's also another section of it, which is 84, but 13 of it, that talks about the infraction.
Yes, we discussed this earlier. There's no way, because you are looking at the fact that they are political appointees and they were appointed or appointed by a sitting president or a sitting governor and so on, then you want to deny them of their political right to vote and be voted.
But we can. But Abdullahi, Mohammed Abdullahi, we cannot also ignore the fact that we understand where this is coming from. I mean, that particular, in the process of formulating the act and coming up with this particular part of it, it's because of what happens, the dynamics that happens, where you have, the issue of godfatherism, where you have these governors becoming very prominent and dominating and deciding who becomes a delegate and influencing, the politics at the political level. So, I mean, would you be saying that this is a wrong? Are you saying two wrongs? Are you saying that this is a wrong?
Two wrongs cannot be right. Two wrongs cannot be right. If two wrongs cannot be right, that's what we must understand. Yes, for them, you are already preempting. We are just preempting that because they are political appointees, then their vote will sway to a particular place. It's not always like that. It's very possible that you are not happy with your boss, even as a worker on PlusTvAfrica. So it's very possible. So it is, for instance, even take the instance of the sitting vice president. For God's sake, he went around 36 states in Nigeria and even the Federal Capital Territory, and people were almost assuring him that there will be a revolution. But when he was not even second, he was third, in the rankings when the primaries were held. So politics, we can't just preempt. You understand? I see it as wrong that because people are political appointees, then you want to deny them their right to vote and be voted for. That is one. But like I said earlier, again, if you look at the direct primaries, it is best in Nigeria's interest because the local man will have a say in who is nominated as a party's candidate even before the general election. So that is to Nigeria's interest.
All right. What about the observations, by this lawmaker from Kebbi State? I want to say some of the things. Just quote him a little bit. He said, "Our recent nasty experience of the misuse of the consensus and delegate system has vindicated our earlier position on the merits of direct primaries." Let's look at what he calls the misuse of the consensus system. How do you suggest, since you're saying that the law should not recommend one way for the parties to behave, how do you recommend the abuse that as he put it, or the misuse of the consensus system be solved, since it's identified as a loophole, a gap, a weakness in the Electoral Act?
Yes, you see, it's a weakness because the Electoral Act as it is now seems to just, compel parties for either the indirect method or the consensus method. You understand? Hello?
Yes. So how would you suggest it be solved?
So that's why I'm suggesting that we at least give options to political parties. We've discussed the direct method and the indirect method. The direct method gives the local man in each of our 774 local government the opportunity to choose, his party's flag bearers, but at a more expensive cost to the party. So if it's possible that the parties are able to hold this, and even if it's not a win-win even for the politicians, they know the delegate system even pays them more because they are able to bribe few people that are delegates. But if you have the direct system, as we discussed earlier, they are at risk of either winning or losing because you can't pay up everybody. You understand? So it's an advantage for democracy, it's an advantage for Nigeria and the voting populace if we can adopt the direct method, even though it is much more expensive. That's my own point. It is very expensive for us because it's like we are conducting a mini elections all over again.
But I mean, it seems you're making a U-turn on what you earlier said to probably support and have some good things to say about it, because you seem to be against it. I'm not saying you should be in support of it, but I'm saying since you are saying that we should allow something. How can we?
I'm not against direct primaries.
All right. So are you saying that you think the Senate should amend the Electoral Act so that these weaknesses can be blocked or can be solved, or are you saying because if the consensus option is there, it will be abused? Mohammed Abdullahi, it will be abused. They're abusing it. These guys are abusing the consensus. So why give them that option that we can sit around the table, all right? And I mean, INEC right now in the next few weeks will be inundated with litigation. Where's the money for INEC to pay lawyers and the time for INEC to go to court to start addressing, useless cases, that we could have prevented? They are going to start going to court very soon. Watch out. They're all going to go to court. And these things, maybe some would argue, could be prevented if they say, do this.
I never mentioned consensus. In fact, consensus is not part of democracy. But when you say consensus, you are not giving people the opportunity to choose. So it's never part of democracy. It's not a form of democracy at all. What I said, and I stand upon, is that there should be options, and the options I'm talking about is either direct or indirect. Because in my own opinion as well, if you say compel parties to go with direct only, you have also not, you have limited the possibility of democracy. You understand? Likewise, if you say parties as it is now should also use the indirect method. So there should be options. Parties that are able to go, that are able to use the direct method should do that. And those ones who feel they can still use the indirect, not consensus, please, indirect method should also hold on to that.
Well, that's so much we can take. I mean, it's a conversation that would continue as we progress in the course of the week and, as we inch closer to 2023. Let's see how all of this unfolds. Thank you so much, Abdullahi Mohammed, for being part of the breakfast.
Thank you very much.
One of the perceived weaknesses or one of the controversial aspects of this mercy of Electoral Act would be Section 33 and the interpretation of Section 33, I think also 34 as well. And the use of placeholders. I was hoping Abdullah would help us talk about that. But it's interesting to see because the section never mentioned, people who were not elected in primary. And all parties who are using placeholder running mates, time will tell if they were right or wrong. It may turn out that they will not be able to change them. So this is some of the things that, I think the National Assembly can also discuss. Placeholder in this. Placeholder has become a thing. We need to talk about it. But we'll have some opportunities to discuss this. And of course, let's quickly remind you that you can follow us on social media, on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, search for PlusTvAfrica. On YouTube, we are at PlusTvAfrica for our live streams. You can watch those at PlusTvAfrica Lifestyle from all of us here. That's the sizable package. My name is Kofi Bertels. Thanks for joining us.
I am Messi Boko. The news comes your way at 9 o'clock. Please stay with us.